Welcome back to Easy English Talk podcast.
You're at a coffee shop, staring at the menu, and suddenly you freeze. Should you tell the barista, I may have a cappuccino, or I might have a cappuccino? And wait, does choosing the wrong word actually change what you're trying to say? Hello, and welcome to Easy English Talk podcast. I'm Ryan, and joining me, as always, is my co-host Priya. Today, we are discussing how to use may and might in English.
Hi, everyone. It's great to have you here with us. This topic is one of the most requested by our listeners, and honestly, I completely understand why it causes so much confusion.
So let's be clear about what you're going to learn in the next few minutes. By the end of this episode, you'll know exactly when to use may, when to use might, and when both words work perfectly. You'll also discover why understanding these two words will make your English sound significantly more natural and confident.
And here's the thing that most English learners don't realize. Even native speakers sometimes pause and wonder which one to use. So if you've been confused, you're in very good company.
But the confusion makes sense when you think about it. These two words seem almost identical at first glance. They both talk about things that might happen, things that are uncertain, possibilities in the future.
Exactly, and teachers often say they're interchangeable, which is mostly true, but not always. And that's where the real learning happens, understanding those subtle differences.
So we're going to break this down step by step. We'll start with the basics, move into the differences, and then get into real-world usage. By the end, you'll have complete clarity on this topic.
Let's begin with understanding what these words actually are. May and might are both what we call modal verbs. Modal verbs are special helping words that add extra meaning to the main verb in a sentence.
Right, and modal verbs are unique in English. They don't change form like regular verbs do. You don't say mays or mights or made. They always stay the same.
Other modal verbs you probably know include can, could, will, would, should, and must. They all work similarly in the sentence structure, and they all express things like ability, permission, possibility, or obligation.
Now, when we talk about may and might specifically, they're primarily used to express possibility. Possibility means something could happen, but we're not sure. It's not certain, it's not guaranteed, it's just a chance.
For example, if I look outside and see dark clouds, I might say, it may rain later. Or I could say, it might rain later. Both sentences mean exactly the same thing. There's a possibility of rain, but I'm not certain.
And this is the first important point to understand. In most everyday situations, especially when talking about future possibilities, may and might are completely interchangeable. Native speakers use them back and forth without even thinking about it.
So if you're worried about choosing the wrong one in casual conversation, relax. Most of the time, either word will be perfectly fine. The person you are talking to will understand you clearly no matter which one you choose.
However, and this is where it gets interesting, there are some situations where they're not quite the same. There are subtle differences in formality, in meaning, and in specific grammatical uses. And understanding these differences is what takes your English from good to excellent.
Let's talk about the first major difference, which is formality. May is generally considered slightly more formal than might. It's not a huge difference, but it's noticeable in certain contexts.
Think about professional settings, job interviews, business emails, academic writing, or formal conversations. In these situations, may tends to sound more polished and professional. It carries a certain level of respect and courtesy.
For instance, imagine you're writing an email to your manager. You might write, I may need to leave the office early tomorrow for a doctor's appointment. That sounds professional, polite, and appropriate for workplace communication.
Now, if you wrote, I might need to leave early tomorrow, it's not wrong. It's still perfectly acceptable and grammatically correct, but may just has that slightly more formal edge to it.
The same applies to academic writing. If you're writing a research paper or an essay, you'd probably write something like, this approach may yield better results. It sounds more scholarly and measured than using might.
On the other hand, might is more commonly used in casual, everyday conversation. When you're chatting with friends, family, or colleagues in an informal setting, might tends to flow more naturally. It sounds relaxed and conversational.
For example, if you're talking to a friend about weekend plans, you'd probably say, I might go to the movies on Saturday. That sounds natural and friendly. Using may in that context might sound a bit stiff or overly formal.
So here's a simple guideline to remember. When you're in formal situations, job interviews, business meetings, formal emails, and academic contexts, lean towards may. When you're in casual situations, texting friends, chatting over coffee, informal conversations, might is perfectly natural.
But remember, this is just a guideline, not a strict rule. Native speakers break this guideline all the time, so don't stress too much about it.
Now let's talk about the second difference, which involves the degree of certainty. Some grammar experts argue that might expresses a slightly lower probability than may, but I have to be honest, this is a very subtle difference, and many native speakers don't consciously notice it.
Right, so theoretically, if I say she may come to the party, I'm suggesting there's a reasonable chance, and if I say she might come to the party, the probability could be slightly lower. But in practice, most people use these sentences interchangeably without thinking about probability levels.
Exactly. And unless you're being extremely precise in your language, maybe in technical writing or legal documents, this difference doesn't matter much. What matters more is the context, your tone of voice, and the overall situation. Those factors communicate certainty much more clearly than the choice between may and might.
So my advice is don't overthink this particular difference. If you're speaking naturally and using either word to express uncertainty, people will understand you perfectly. Focus on the differences that actually matter more in everyday communication.
Now here's where things get really important. The difference in how we use may and might for permission. This is one area where you absolutely cannot swap them around freely. May is used for permission, but might is not.
This is crucial to understand because using the wrong word here can sound very strange. When you want to ask for permission politely, you use may. For example, may I use your phone? Or may I ask you a question?
These are classic, polite ways to request permission. They're formal, respectful, and appropriate in almost any situation. You'll hear this in schools, offices, formal events, and anywhere politeness is valued.
But if you said, might I use your phone? It would sound extremely odd. It's technically possible in very old-fashioned or literary English, but in modern conversation, it sounds unnatural. Most native speakers would find it strange or even confusing.
So the rule is simple. For permission, always use may. May I, may we, may he, may she, may they. These all work for asking or giving permission. Might just doesn't fit in this context at all.
Here's another example to make this crystal clear. A teacher might say to a student, "You may leave the classroom now." That's giving permission. The student is allowed to go.
But if the teacher said, "You might leave the classroom now," the meaning completely changes. Now it's not permission anymore. It's a possibility. The teacher is suggesting that perhaps the student will leave, but it's uncertain.
See how important this distinction is? One word change completely alters the meaning of the sentence. So when you're dealing with permission, always choose may.
Now, let's move into talking about the past tense. This is where things get a bit more complex, but don't worry, we'll make it clear. When we want to talk about possibilities in the past, we use what's called the perfect form.
The perfect form is made by adding have plus the past participle of the verb. So we get have plus the past participle. For example, gone, been, done, seen, and so on.
Let's look at an example. Imagine your friend didn't answer their phone yesterday. You could say, she may have been busy, or she might have been busy.
Both of these sentences are grammatically correct. They both mean the same thing. You're speculating about a past possibility. You're saying it's possible she was busy, but you're not certain.
However, in everyday conversation, might have is more commonly used than may have. It just sounds more natural to most native speakers when talking about past possibilities. May have is still correct, but it can sound slightly more formal or less common.
So if you want to sound more natural and conversational, go with might have. For example, he might have forgotten about the meeting, or they might have taken a different route. These sound very natural and are the way most people speak.
Here's another example to practice. Imagine you can't find your keys. You might say, I might have left them in the car, or I may have left them at the office.
Both work perfectly, but might have flows more naturally. And notice that we're not certain, we're just considering possibilities. That uncertainty is the key to using these expressions correctly.
Now here's a really important rule that many learners don't know. When we're talking about hypothetical or unreal situations in the past, we must use might have, not may have. This is not optional, it's a grammatical requirement.
Let me explain what we mean by hypothetical or unreal situations. These are situations that didn't actually happen. We're imagining what could have happened if things were different. We often use these in sentences with if.
Here's a perfect example. If I had studied harder, I might have passed the exam. This sentence is talking about the past, but it's imagining a different reality. In actual reality, you didn't study harder and you didn't pass the exam. The sentence is exploring what could have been possible in a different scenario. And in these hypothetical past situations, you cannot use may have, you must use might have. Saying, if I had studied harder, I may have, sounds grammatically incorrect.
Here's another example to make this crystal clear. If she had called me, I might have been able to help her. Again, she didn't call and you didn't help. This is imagining an alternative past.
If we had left earlier, we might have avoided the traffic. We didn't leave earlier, we didn't avoid traffic. It's a hypothetical scenario. Always use might have in these situations.
This is one of those rules that really matters. Native speakers will notice if you use may have in a hypothetical past sentence. It will sound off even if the person can still understand what you mean.
So, to summarize what we've covered about past tense usage, for general past possibilities, both may have and might have work, but might have is more natural. For hypothetical or unreal past situations, you must use might have only.
Perfect. Now let's move into talking about some common mistakes that English learners make with may and might. Understanding these mistakes will help you avoid them and sound more natural. The first mistake is a structural one.
Remember that may and might are modal verbs. Modal verbs are always followed by the base form of the verb. That's the simple form without to. So you say, I may go, not I may to go. This is a really common error, especially for learners whose native languages use to after helping verbs. In languages like Spanish, French, or German, this structure exists, but in English, modal verbs never take to after them.
Here are some correct examples. She might call later, not she might to call later. We may visit them tomorrow, not we may to visit them tomorrow.
The base form always comes directly after may or might. No to, no ing, no other forms, just the simple base verb. Get the structure right and your sentences will sound much more natural.
Another really common mistake is trying to combine modal verbs together. In English, you cannot use two modal verbs next to each other. So you can't say, I might can go, or she may will come.
This might feel natural if you're translating from your native language, but in English, it's grammatically impossible to stack modals like this. If you need to express a similar idea, you have to rephrase the sentence.
For example, instead of saying, I might can help you, which is wrong, you would say, I might be able to help you. Be able to is not a modal verb, so it can come after might. That's the correct way to express that idea.
Here's another example. Instead of may she will come tomorrow, which is incorrect, you'd say she may come tomorrow, or she will probably come tomorrow. You have to choose one modal or rephrase the sentence entirely.
The third common mistake involves questions. Many learners try to use may and might in questions the same way they use other modal verbs, but the rules are different here.
May can be used in questions, but only when you're asking for permission. May I sit here is correct because you're asking if it's okay to sit. May I interrupt for a moment is asking for permission to interrupt.
But you would never use may to ask about possibilities in a question. For example, you wouldn't say, may it rain tomorrow? That sounds extremely unnatural and old-fashioned.
The same goes for might. You almost never start a question with might in modern English. Might it rain tomorrow is grammatically possible, but it sounds very formal and outdated. Native speakers simply don't talk this way anymore.
So how do you ask about possibilities? You restructure the question entirely. Instead of, might she come to the party, you would say, do you think she might come to the party?
Or you could ask, will she come to the party? Or is she coming to the party? These are the natural ways to ask about possibilities. The modal verb comes in the middle of the sentence, not at the beginning.
Here's another example. Instead of may the train be late, you would ask, do you think the train might be late? Or could the train be late? This is how native speakers actually phrase these questions.
The fourth common mistake is overusing may and might. Some learners use these words even when they're certain about something, but may and might are specifically for uncertainty when you don't know for sure.
If you're certain about something, don't use may or might. For example, if you know your friend is definitely coming to dinner, don't say she may come to dinner. That makes it sound like you're unsure, which confuses the listener.
Instead, say she's coming to dinner or she will come to dinner. Use clear, certain language when you're certain. Save may and might for when there's genuine uncertainty or possibility.
Now let's talk about some really useful phrases and expressions that use may and might. Learning these phrases will make your English sound much more fluent and natural. The first one is may as well or might as well.
This is a super common expression in everyday English. It means it makes sense to do something, or there's no good reason not to do it. It's used when a particular action seems like the logical or reasonable choice in a situation.
For example, imagine you and your friend are already at the mall and you say, we're already here, so we may as well check out that new store. You're saying, since we're in the situation already, we should take advantage of it.
Or imagine you're running late for a movie. You might say, we're already late, so we might as well take our time and grab coffee first. The logic is since we've already missed the beginning, rushing doesn't help. Both may as well and might as well are equally common. You can use either one. They mean exactly the same thing. And this phrase comes up constantly in casual conversation, so it's really worth learning.
Here's another really useful phrase. May well or might well. This expression means quite likely or probably, or it's reasonable to expect. It adds a sense of probability to what you're saying.
For instance, this may well be the best decision we've ever made. You're saying it's quite likely or very possibly the best decision. There's confidence in the statement even though you're using may. Or you could say, he might well win the competition. He's trained harder than anyone. You're expressing that winning is probable or reasonable given the circumstances. It's stronger than just saying he might win.
Another expression, though less common, is come what may. This is more formal and slightly poetic or literary. It means no matter what happens or whatever the outcome.
You might hear someone say, I'll support you come what may. They're expressing unconditional support regardless of what happens. It's a strong, determined way of speaking.
You don't hear this phrase in everyday casual conversation very often. It's more likely to appear in speeches, formal declarations, or emotional moments, but it's good to recognize it when you hear it.
Now let's talk about how may and might are used in polite language. This is an area where these words really shine. They can make your English sound much more courteous and diplomatic. Understanding this will help you navigate professional and social situations more effectively.
May is particularly useful for polite requests. When you want to ask for something in a formal or respectful way, may is your go-to word. It shows consideration and good manners.
For example, may I ask you a question is very polite and respectful. It's much more courteous than just saying, can I ask you a question, which, while not rude, is more direct. In professional settings, may makes you sound more polished.
Other examples include, may I have your attention, please? Or may I make a suggestion? These are all formal, respectful ways to interact. You'll hear them in business meetings, formal events, and professional communications.
Now, you could technically say, might I ask you a question? But this sounds extremely formal, almost old-fashioned. It's the kind of language you might find in period dramas or very formal British English. In modern everyday conversation, it would sound a bit too stiff.
So, for polite requests, stick with may. It strikes the right balance between formality and naturalness. It's polite without being overly formal or strange sounding.
Might, on the other hand, is excellent for making polite suggestions or giving gentle advice. When you want to offer an idea without sounding pushy or commanding, might is perfect. It softens the suggestion and makes it feel like a helpful option rather than a directive.
Here are some more examples. You might want to check your email. Sounds gentle and encouraging. You might try restarting your computer. Offers helpful advice without being bossy.
This is especially useful in professional settings where you want to be helpful but not overbearing, or in personal relationships where you want to offer guidance without seeming controlling. Might creates that perfect diplomatic tone.
Another way to use may and might politely is when expressing concerns or potential problems. If you need to bring up something that could go wrong, these words help you do it tactfully. They make your concern sound thoughtful rather than alarmist.
For instance, in a business meeting, you might say, "We may encounter some delays with this timeline." That sounds measured and professional. It raises the concern without creating panic.
Or, there might be some budget issues we need to address. Again, you're bringing up a potential problem, but in a calm, constructive way. This kind of language keeps discussions productive and positive.
Using may or might for concerns shows you're thinking ahead and being responsible. But it also shows you're not being dramatic or negative. It's a balanced, mature way to communicate challenges.
Now, let's discuss negative forms, may not and might not. These are used to express negative possibilities, meaning something possibly won't happen. And just like with positive forms, they're generally interchangeable.
For example, she may not come to the meeting and she might not come to the meeting mean the same thing. Both express uncertainty about whether she'll attend. There's a possibility she won't come, but you're not certain.
The same rules about formality apply here. May not sounds slightly more formal, while might not sounds more casual, but both are perfectly correct in any situation.
One small note, in British English, might not is sometimes contracted to mightn't. You might hear someone say, "He mightn't agree with us," but this contraction is quite rare in American English.
In American English, people almost always say might not as two separate words. Mightn't can sound unusual or overly British to American ears. May not is never contracted in any form of English. You'll never hear mayn't in modern language.
Now, it's really important to understand that may not and might not are very different from cannot or must not. This distinction trips up a lot of learners, so let's be clear about it. May not and might not express possibility, uncertainty about something not happening.
For example, he may not come means maybe he won't come, but I'm not sure. It's expressing a possibility. Compare this to he cannot come, which means it's impossible for him to come. That's about impossibility. Something is not able to happen. And he must not come means he is not allowed to come, or it's forbidden for him to come.
So these three concepts, possibility, impossibility, and prohibition, are completely different. Mixing them up can dramatically change your meaning and confuse the person you're talking to. Always think carefully about which one you mean.
Here's another example to make this crystal clear. You may not pass the test means it's possible you won't pass, but you might. You cannot pass the test means passing is impossible. You lack the requirements.
And you must not use your phone during the test means using your phone is forbidden. See how different these meanings are? Choosing the right expression is crucial for clear communication.
Now, let's address a question that comes up sometimes. Can you use may and might in the same sentence? The answer is yes, but only if they're expressing different ideas or referring to different actions.
For example, I may go to the party, but I might leave early. Here, may and might are talking about two different possibilities, going and leaving, so it's perfectly fine to use both.
But you would never say something like, I might go to the party. You can't stack them together like that. It's grammatically impossible. Modal verbs don't combine in English.
In general, though, most people just pick one and stick with it throughout a sentence or conversation. Switching between them unnecessarily can sound a bit awkward or inconsistent. Unless there's a clear reason to use both, just choose one.
Let's talk about the difference between a written and spoken English with these words. Context really matters, and knowing when to use each one will make you sound more natural. In speaking, might tends to be more common overall because it sounds casual and conversational.
When you're chatting with friends, talking on the phone, or having informal discussions, might just flows naturally. I might grab lunch in a bit, or this might take a while. These sound relaxed and normal. Using may in casual speech can sometimes sound a bit formal or stiff.
However, in writing, especially formal writing, may is often the preferred choice. Academic papers, business reports, formal emails, official documents, these contexts call for may. It simply sounds more professional and polished in written form.
For example, in a research paper, you might write, "This method may produce more accurate results." In a business proposal, you could write, "This approach may reduce costs significantly." These sound appropriate for formal written contexts.
But if you're texting a friend, you'd probably write, "This approach might work better." It's the same basic idea, just adapted to a casual context. Matching your language to the situation shows good communication skills.
Here's a helpful guideline to remember. Formal contexts, interviews, presentations, professional emails, academic work, lean toward may. Casual contexts, conversations, texts, informal messages, chatting, might is perfectly natural.
But don't stress too much about this. Even native speakers use them interchangeably in many situations. And honestly, most people won't notice or care which one you choose as long as you're grammatically correct.
Now let's explore some more advanced uses of may and might. These aren't necessary for basic communication, but they'll take your English to a higher level. One advanced use is expressing concession or contrast in more formal speech or writing.
A concession is when you admit or acknowledge something is true, but then you present a contrasting point. May and might can be used to create this sophisticated structure. It's common in debates, academic writing, and thoughtful discussions.
Here's an example. He may be intelligent, but he lacks practical experience. You're acknowledging his intelligence, that's the concession, but then you're contrasting it with a limitation.
Or, she might have good intentions, but her methods are questionable. Again, you're admitting something positive, then introducing a contrasting concern. This structure shows balanced, nuanced thinking.
This usage is really helpful when you want to sound diplomatic or fair-minded. It shows you're considering multiple perspectives rather than being one-sided. In professional discussions, this kind of language demonstrates maturity and critical thinking.
You'll also hear the structure in phrases like, "That may be true, but we still need to consider other factors." Or, "You might be right about that, however, there are some complications." It's a sophisticated way to maintain productive dialogue.
Another advanced use is in formal wishes or blessings. This is more poetic or ceremonial language, but it's worth recognizing. You only use may in this context, never might.
For example, "May you have a wonderful birthday," or "May all your dreams come true." These are formal, heartfelt expressions of good wishes. You'll see them in greeting cards, speeches, ceremonies, and sometimes religious contexts.
May you find happiness, or may peace be with you. These phrases have a lovely, dignified quality. They're not used in everyday casual conversation very often, but in appropriate contexts, they add a beautiful formal touch.
Just don't overuse this structure. If you're constantly saying, "May you have a great day," to everyone you meet, it might sound overly formal or a bit strange. Save it for special occasions or meaningful moments.
Now let's take a moment to review all the key points we've covered. This will help solidify everything in your mind. May and might are modal verbs used primarily to express possibility and uncertainty.
In most situations, especially when talking about future or present possibilities, they're interchangeable. Native speakers use them back and forth without much thought, so don't worry too much about choosing the wrong one in casual conversation.
May is slightly more formal and is the correct choice for asking or giving permission. It's also preferred in formal writing, like business documents and academic papers. Might is more casual and common in everyday spoken English.
For past possibilities, both may have and might have work, but might have sounds more natural. For hypothetical or unreal past situations, you must use might have. May have doesn't work grammatically. This is an important distinction to remember.
Common mistakes to avoid include adding to after may or might, combining them with other modal verbs, using them incorrectly in questions, and using them when you're actually certain about something. These mistakes can make you sound less fluent, so it's worth practicing to avoid them.
Useful phrases include may as well, might as well, may well, might well, and come what may. These expressions are common in native speech and will make you sound more natural. Try to incorporate them into your practice.
In polite language, may is excellent for respectful requests, while might is perfect for gentle suggestions and advice. Both can be used to express concerns diplomatically. Mastering polite language is crucial for professional and social success in English.
Negative forms may not and might not express negative possibilities. Remember, they're different from cannot, which expresses impossibility, and must not, which expresses prohibition. Understanding these distinctions prevents confusion and miscommunication.
The best way to truly master may and might is through practice and exposure. Start paying attention to how native speakers use these words in movies, TV shows, podcasts, and real conversations. Notice the contexts, the tone, and the situations.
Try creating your own sentences using may and might every day. Think about different situations, asking permission, expressing possibilities, making suggestions. Practice out loud if you can, because hearing yourself use the words correctly builds confidence.
Don't be afraid to make mistakes. Even native speakers sometimes pause and think about which word to use. The fact that you're learning these distinctions shows you're taking your English seriously.
And remember, language learning is a journey, not a destination. You don't need to be perfect, you need to be understood. As long as you're communicating clearly and continuing to improve, you're doing great.
One more practical tip. When you're reading English, whether it's articles, books, or social media, notice when authors use may and might. Ask yourself why they chose that particular word. This kind of active observation helps you develop an intuitive sense of language.
The same goes for listening. When you hear someone use may or might, think about the context. Are they being formal or casual? Are they talking about permission or possibility? This analytical approach speeds up your learning.
Over time, using may and might will become second nature. You won't have to think about the rules consciously, it'll just feel right. That's the goal, and you'll get there with consistent practice and exposure.
Also, don't hesitate to use these words in your own communication. The more you use them, the more comfortable you'll become. Start small. Use them in texts, emails, and casual conversations.
And if you're not sure whether to use may or might in a particular situation, just pick one. As we've emphasized throughout this episode, they're interchangeable most of the time. The fact that you're using modal verbs correctly at all is more important than picking the theoretically perfect one.
Let's also talk about self-correction. If you catch yourself using may or might incorrectly, that's actually a good sign. It means your awareness is growing and you're developing a better sense of the language.
Don't beat yourself up over mistakes. Instead, mentally note what you'd say differently next time and move on. Self-correction is a natural and valuable part of learning.
Another helpful strategy is to find a language partner or tutor who can give you feedback. Practicing with someone who can gently correct you accelerates your progress. And don't be shy about asking questions when you're unsure.
Finally, remember that mastering may and might is just one piece of the larger puzzle of English fluency. Keep working on other aspects of grammar, vocabulary, pronunciation, and listening comprehension. Everything works together to build your overall skill.
And celebrate your progress along the way. If you understand this episode and can use may and might with more confidence now than before, that's a real achievement. Give yourself credit for the work you're putting in.
All right, I think we've really thoroughly covered this topic from every angle. You now have a complete understanding of how to use may and might in English. You know the similarities, the differences, the rules, the exceptions, and the practical applications.
We've explored formality, permission, past tense usage, hypothetical situations, common mistakes, useful phrases, polite language, negative forms, and advanced uses. That's a comprehensive education on these two important words, and you should feel confident moving forward.
The knowledge is yours now. The next step is putting it into practice. Use what you've learned in your daily English communication. Experiment, make mistakes, learn from them, and keep improving.
We really hope this episode has given you clarity and confidence. Understanding may and might is going to make your English sound more natural, more nuanced, and more sophisticated. These are small words, but they make a big difference in how you communicate.
Thank you so much for spending this time with us today. We truly appreciate your dedication to learning and improving your English. Your commitment to understanding these details shows that you're serious about achieving fluency.
Before we go, we want to invite you to explore more episodes of Easy English Talk podcast. We have many other topics that will help you improve different aspects of your English. Whether it's grammar, vocabulary, pronunciation, or conversation skills, we're here to support you.
You'll find episodes on confusing word pairs, essential grammar rules, everyday expressions, and so much more. Each episode is designed to be clear, practical, and easy to understand. We break down complex topics just like we did today.
So please take a look at our other content, find topics that interest you or areas where you want to improve, and keep learning with us. We're here to be your guide on this English learning journey, and we create new episodes regularly to help you continue growing.
Remember, consistency is key in language learning. Even spending just a few minutes each day with English makes a huge difference over time. So, make Easy English Talk podcast part of your regular learning routine.
We'd also love to hear from you. If you have questions about today's topic or suggestions for future episodes, please reach out. Your feedback helps us create content that truly serves your needs.
All right, we'll wrap up here. Keep practicing, stay curious, and don't be afraid to use may and might in your conversations. You've got this, and we believe in your ability to master English.
Thank you again for listening. We're so glad you joined us today. Take care, keep learning, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Until next time, stay confident, keep improving, and enjoy the journey of learning English. Goodbye for now, and happy learning.
Goodbye, everyone. We'll talk to you very soon. Thanks for being part of our community.